Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. And if you enjoy this fanfic, then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic.
Naruto Uzumaki. If you asked who that boy was, the answer would vary greatly. If you asked someone from out of Konoha, the answer would be, unsurprisingly, that they had no idea and probably didn't give a damn. Now, if you asked inside Konoha, the answers would get interesting. The ninja would say he was the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, the civilians that he was the demon brat. Most called him a troublemaker, some the Fox Reborn. But there was one thing, one name on which they all agreed, pervert. Naruto Uzumaki was the alpha pervert of the leaf, his perviness dwarfing that of Jiraiya himself at his age. Of course, he didn't become a pervert just like that. In fact, he became one after seeing a couple making love, and began to associate with love, thus if he had, he would have love. As he grew up, he realized he was wrong, but being a pervert was fun, so why stop? But Naruto also wanted to become a ninja, and while he wasn't stupid, he wasn't at his brightest when he was despaired, and thus Mizuki had tricked him. But with his hope returning, so did his smarts. I am so dumb, of course it's not a secondary test, it's a freakin' trap. Damn it. My only hope is to make everyone believe I knew since the start and wanted to trap Mizuki. Maybe if I can capture him I'll be made a ninja, if so I hope to be on Chan's team. Naruto drooled slightly before shaking it off and beginning to work. He quickly learned the shadow clone technique and then used the newly acquired clones to prepare the battlefield. However, one Iruka Yumino found him, or rather one of his clones. Before the scarred instructor could speak, the clone held its hand up. No time to talk, please take position in the sidelines, I'm trying to capture a traitor. Quote. The clone led a surprised Iruka to a vantage point where he could see Naruto, casually leaning against a small shack. Iruka looked at the one next to him only to see the blonde wave at him and puff away. That shocked Iruka. Naruto on his part was surprised to see that he received his clone's memory, and filed the information for later. Soon enough, Mizuki arrived, a smirk on his face. Congratulations Naruto. You did it. Now, give me the scroll. Weren't you supposed to see if I have mastered a technique of the scroll? Mizuki's smirk turned malevolent. Do you really believe, you idiot, that you could master a cage-level technique? Now be a good demon, give the scroll, and I'll let you go alive, though you'll have to find another village. Konoha is a bit miffed by your theft. Quote. Naruto stuck an exaggerated thinking pause, rubbing his chin. You. Hails of shuriken and kunai suddenly appeared, all aimed at Mizuki, who did his best to block them all, and he did a good job at that, even slashing open the net that was supposed to trap him from above. Iruka dashed from his hiding spot, taking position in front of Naruto with a kunai in each hand. Naruto, retreat with the scroll, I'll take care of that traitor. Quote. What makes you think I'm done? Iruka, confused, turned his gaze, only to see Naruto pull lightly on a string. The result had the academy teacher's jaw reach the floor. Hidden explosive tags exploded all around Mizuki, blinding and deafening him, as kunai linked with wire flew from the trees, trapping Mizuki. When the dust settled, Mizuki was tightly tied up. Seething in rage, Mizuki glared at the two while Iruka slowly nodded his head, impressed. However, a rustle in the bushes caught everyone's attention. From the undergrowth, a brown creature emerged. It looked like a goblin or imp, its grotesque face distorted in an expression of wonderment. It looked at Naruto for a moment then screamed, "Master!" It ran across the clearing, showing the small club in its hand, an expression of stupid joy on its face before reaching Naruto and bowing repeatedly while chanting happily the word, "Master," for whatever reason it had. Naruto blinked 3 times. That's even more shocking than finding out Kyuubi's in my guts. Mizuki and Iruka whipped their heads toward Naruto, even more shocked, then they whipped it towards the sound of someone landing, namely the Hokage. Naruto-kun, how long have you known? I met the fox earlier this year. He's a complete asshole, said Naruto, still studying the bowing creature. Then, the creature suddenly raised its head, and turned to the undergrowth. Then, it jumped to its feet and began jumping in place screaming repeatedly, "Master!" as if calling onto someone or something that was in the forest. Soon, other little brown creatures emerged from the wood and joined the first in their adoration of Naruto. Interestingly, some had found things of use in the forest. A few had found kunai, rusty or not, and used them as weapons. One had even found an old tanto, 2 had rabbit skins as hats, and, surprisingly, the last one arrived had white hair with a small ponytail at the back, glasses and a headband with a music note, though he looked just as stupid as the others. Grumbling was heard from the undergrowth, and a gray and old-looking creature emerged. It was draped in a rags, had metal pauldrons and a wooden stick strapped to his back with a glowing stone hanging from the stick above his head. Damn Browns, leaving an old minion to fend for itself in a hostile forest, and damn that fox, its chakra and all the interferences it created. Stench. What happened with that white-haired idiot? A green and quite true to its name creature fell from the trees, looking at the gray one and jumping a bit excitedly. Dead. Dead. Wanted capture us. And kill Overlord. So killed idiot. Good. Good. Oh, I see the Browns were useful in the end, the Overlord has been found. Quote. Naruto pointed a finger at himself, a bit surprised. Yes. Yes, young man. You are the new Overlord. I am Gnarl, master of the minions. My smelly friend here is Stench, master assassin of the Overlord, and these pitiful things dancing around you are the Browns. What they lack in brain, they make up in resilience and strength. Please follow us so that you may explore your castle in Uzu. It is a bit in ruin, but it can be rebuilt fairly quickly. Quote. Sure, but I'm kinda taken right now. Can it wait a bit? Most certainly. Oh, heir of the Uzumaki clan. Okay. Old man, there's a lot to explain, I believe. Quote. The Hokage nodded, and then snapped his fingers. A squad of Anbu appeared, and immediately the brown minions gathered around Naruto in a defensive formation, snarling at the masked ninja. Naruto, trying something, ordered them to stand down, and they did. Hiruzen returned his attention to the wary Anbu. Take this traitor to Ibiki for questioning. The Anbu took Mizuki and disappeared. Then Hiruzen turned to Naruto and, Gnarl. I think it would be good if you came to my office, there is some explaining to do. Iruka, you're coming too. They followed the Hokage toward the village, Naruto ignoring completely the shocked and/or hateful looks sent his way, the minions blissfully and stupidly following him. The hunt was called off. Hiruzen revealed that Naruto had helped catch a traitor and thus earned his rank as a genin, giving the blonde his headband in front of a good quarter of the ninja currently in the village. Looking at the crowd of brown thingies standing behind Naruto, he wasn't so sure he wanted them in his office. Naruto, do you believe you could send these things back to where they came from. I'd like to keep my office organized. Naruto looked at Gnarl for help, and the old minion pointed the park near the Hokage Tower. We can summon a portal to the tower in this park, from there you should be able to send the minions back. Quote. Naruto nodded and went to the park. Going to a part of the park with a lot of space and relatively small traffic during the day, he looked at Gnarl expectantly. One moment, my lord. Fishing in his rags, Gnarl took a small light blue stone out. Giblet. Do you hear me? A small silence, then a stupid and excited voice answered. Giblet here. Yes. What can Giblet do? Prepare a portal, and send it to this stone, and be quick. After a moment, the stone turned yellow, and Gnarl threw it at the open space. As soon as the stone reached the ground, it exploded in light and smoke. When they could look safely again, they saw a small open building. It was square, with a thick column at each corner supporting a traditional Japanese-style roof. There were no walls, and on the floor in the middle of the building was a vast array of runes. 4 torii gates also stood near the building, one in front of each of the entrances. Naruto motioned for the brown minions to go to the portal, and they quickly did it before disappearing in a flash of red. This done, the Hokage led them to his office and demanded a report. Naruto, not wanting to insult the Hokage, that would be stupid, told the whole truth, including the fact he had been deceived. Once done, they turned to Gnarl. Now, could you please explain why you are present? Most certainly. As a minion I, along with the others, am part of the Uzumaki properties. We would have gotten to our overlord sooner, but that blasted fox expelled so much chakra that it shut off the tower heart until now. We would have been there during the attack, but the boy's mother rejected the title of overlady. Quote. A small silence ensued, before Sarutobi asked another question. What do you mean you are part of the Uzumaki properties? We were given to his line by the sage of Six Path and have remained in their possession since then. Quote. A gigantic smile came upon Naruto's face while Iruka and Sarutobi had their eyes grow the size of platters. Excuse me. Yes, the sage had 3 children. To his oldest son, he gave his eyes, and the brat fathered the Uchiha clan. To his youngest son, he gave his body, and the little prick gave birth to the Senju clan. But to his 3rd child, his daughter, the one that was forgotten, he gave his greatest tool, as the minions. Under the Rakudo, we defeated a god. The Jubi. He was the first overlord, and from his daughter's line, the Uzumaki, countless overlords and overladies have arisen. Though, for reasons I can't fathom, none decided to conquer the world. Quote. So let me get this straight. Said Naruto. I'm a descendant of the fabled Rakudo Sennin. I have at my disposal a potential army that kicked the of a thingy even more powerful than the Kyuubi, and I have a castle somewhere. Quote. Yes. Awesome. What are the fine prints? Well, as the new overlord, you'll have to restore the castle. It is currently in a state of disrepair that is quite worrying. Then, both as the last known Uzumaki and as the overlord, you will have to find mistresses too. Whoa, wait a minute. You mean polygamy is a requirement for the job? Quote. Yes, it has been so for generations, it is the traditions of your clan. Said Gnarl with a slight frown, wondering if the boy would reject such an important tradition. To his relief, Naruto smiled the biggest possible smile and had stars in his eyes. Best job ever. Where do I sign? Hyuga Hiyashi sighed tiredly. His eldest daughter kept disappointing him. It was so long since she had last progressed in the Juken, and her Byakugan hadn't evolved in a long time. It was depressing. Where did I fail? But Hiyashi knew that the fault didn't lay in him. Or maybe it did, she was so much like him. The Hyuga were renowned throughout the country for their Byakugan, an eye of great power. The Byakugan, while activated, allowed the bearer to see all around him, and discern the chakra pathways and chakra points, and no matter if it was activated or not, it allowed for extreme clarity of sight, giving every living Hyuga a 30 in each eye. Such perfect sight allowed them to see things in a way only a Hyuga could. It had side effects. Because of their perfect sight, the Hyuga had developed an imagination that was beyond realistic, and because of the capacity of the Byakugan to see through objects when activated, they had ended up picking up some tendencies. To put it bluntly, the Hyuga were a clan of glorified perverts. And just like their mind had reacted to their eyes had reacted to their minds. Now, to unlock the different stages of the Byakugan, you needed to indulge in carnal pleasure. The naughtier the act, the stronger your Byakugan got. If the civilians knew exactly the extent of the acts of depravity that took place behind the walls of the Hyuga, who knows how they'd react? But as Hiyashi always believed, it was better to get stronger through than through sorrow like the Uchiha. Thinking back on this brought back many fond memories of his wife, his brother and sister-in-law. Many times they had indulged in earthly pleasures, and a healthy doubt remained over whose children Neji and Hinata were. Exactly the two who were causing him a world of trouble. Hinata was a sweet child, something Hiyashi had nothing against, but she had a romantic streak. She was smitten with the Uzumaki boy and refused to go farther than masturbating. It wouldn't be so bad, if she at least went to the boy, but she was hell-bent on being submissive to him in every way, and so far the Uzumaki had only groped her. It was quite disheartening, really. The boy was a fine lad, with a healthy interest in the opposite, and his general behavior would make him welcome in the Hyuga clan, but he hadn't gone any farther than groping Hinata, something that left the clan head at a loss of words. Hiyashi knew that his daughter, because of her lack of talent with the gentle fist, needed to become ally active sooner in order to become stronger and increase her chances of survival, but she stubbornly refused. And then, Hiyashi had made the mistake of entrusting that Kurenai woman with a part of Hinata's education, hoping she could bring something to the girl that he could not, but he had discovered too late that the woman was a rabid anti-pervert, and feared that she would influence Hinata in some way. With a bit of luck, her team would surprise her masturbating and it would escalate into a threesome, a father could hope. Then there was Neji. In their fighting style, he was a prodigy without a doubt, but when it came to his behavior, he was a major problem. He had a deep-seated hatred of the main house, something Hiyashi could understand, but he also was almost owl. He kept unlocking new levels of power without partaking in any UAL activity, and it worried Hiyashi to no end. He feared the boy would consider himself superior to the other Hyuga, causing his already inflated ego to grow even more. He also feared for Hinata's life should the two of them ever fight. Neji had, during spars, tried to maim Hinata at several occasions, something that had led Hiyashi to forbid any spar between the two. Yes, if he had to give an opinion, Hiyashi would without hesitation say that Neji was the biggest problem. With yet another sigh, Hiyashi went to deal with the irritable elders. They had become insufferable since they couldn't get laid anymore. Hinata was depressed. Just the day before yesterday, her crush, her beloved Naruto, had failed the Genin exam, again. And she had passed. Now, She couldn't enjoy his wonderful company anymore, nor could she feel his incredible hands as they hungrily explored her nubile and vulnerable body. She sighed, getting her libido under control. Today, the graduates would pass some kind of test. Aruka had said it would help determine the teams, but she felt absolutely no interest whatsoever in this mess. She had come early, very much so, like a lot of her former classmates, but she completely ignored them. She needed air and tranquility, thus she went for the roof. "Hey Hinata-chan," said Kiba, walking beside her. "You seem down, want me to cheer you up?" he said with a slightly perverted, but mostly bright smile. Kiba had boasted he'd lose his virginity before hitting 16, and since he had seen Hinata being groped by Naruto so many times, he believed her to be an easy girl. Sadly for him, his comment had just reminded Hinata of what she couldn't enjoy anymore, putting her in a very sour mood. She stopped, her left eye twitched 3 times, then she grabbed Kiba's head and slammed it into a nearby tree with enough force to embed his face into the bark. She stalked away from the unconscious boy playing at being a nail and resumed her walk toward the entrance of the academy, ignoring the wary looks sent her way. She was almost at the door when another annoyance made itself known. Sasuke Uchiha had seen the scene with Kiba, and was slightly impressed with the girl's strength, thus he decided to make her happy. "The way you dealt with Kiba was impressive. You will eat lunch with me," said the Avenger, causing all the girls to gasp in horror. Hinata turned to Sasuke, a full-blown snarl on her face. Then, she grabbed the Uchiha's head and slammed it into the closet's surface, which so happened to be a wall, and soon Kiba had a nailing buddy, except that Sasuke was slumped against the wall of the academy, only stopped from falling by the fact his face was buried in said wall. Of course, this attack caused Sasuke's fangirls to rush at Hinata, both to help their crush who was still near the irked Hyuga, and to pummel the heretic that dared hurt the divine gift to mankind that was Uchiha Sasuke, just writing that makes me want to puke. They quickly decided that only getting Sasuke out of the wall was safer when they received a smoldering glare from the Hyuga. Hinata finally reached the inside of the building, and began stalking the empty corridors, looking longingly at certain spots. Naruto had trapped her in this closet and groped her for a good 5 minutes before Aruka opened it. In this classroom he had squeezed her and he had cupped her crotch after pining her against this wall. With a sigh, she recalled many such instances. Sure, she wasn't the only girl he had groped. Ino, for instance, had also been one of his targets, but he always came back to her. What she couldn't understand was why he never went farther. Cammy knew she had never fought back. Another sigh made its way past her lips. Then, she felt a hand on her rear. The only person allowed to grope her hadn't passed, and thus couldn't be there. After dealing with Sasuke and Kiba, she was calmer, but she was still pissed. With a growl she addressed the fool who had dared touch her. "You have 5 seconds to remove your hand from my butt and hightail it out of here before I rip your hand off and shove it up your." Naruto yawned and stretched in his new room. After the meeting with the Hokage, he had followed Gnarl through the portal. His new castle wasn't in a very good state, but it didn't really matter. He had sent groups of minions to gather resources. Soon enough, the old castle of the Uzumaki would be rebuilt. He jumped out of his emperor-size bed, because king-size bed was too small to describe that thing, onto the stone floor. He had been happily surprised that the floor wasn't cold last night, and Gnarl had explained that his ancestors had littered the castle with seals designed to ensure his comfort, something he appreciated very much. He had spent yesterday looking around the place and determining priorities. The first thing he had seen was that he didn't have a lot of minions left, barely 100. Gnarl had explained that the invaders who destroyed Whirlpool had taken the hives of the blue, yellow, green and red minions, and most of the surviving minions had scattered around the world in hope of finding the next overlord. Now, he only had one blue, Mortis, a sinister guy, one green, Stench, and a few browns. So, for now, he had to compensate with them. His first act had been to find a steady source of life force to create more minions. Luckily, such a source had quickly presented itself. The invasion had opened the earth, revealing a network of caves running far beneath the island. In these caves, blind animals were common, and he had found a few interesting amphibians and arthropods, not too resilient, but with amazing vitality. The adults had quickly been slaughtered and their life force harvested, while the youngs and the eggs were gathered to set up a kind of farm. He had managed to secure 5 big caves and had blocked the entrances with rubbles. He wasn't ready yet to begin exploring the cave network, not until his army was bigger. With the harvested life force, he had managed to create 50 more minions. He had sent 20 to establish a mushroom farm to feed his new cattle and 10 others to guard said cattle while the last 20 began clearing the 3 caverns that weren't used. With his 100 minions of the start, he returned to the surface and began looking over his lands. His castle needed wood and stone. 20 minions were set to wood chopping, while he took the rest to look for a quarry. Quickly, he found Whirlpool's old quarry and took control of it after making short work of a pack of wolves that had settled there. Since he didn't have that many minions, he did the work himself with his clones. 30 wolf pelt-wearing browns were allocated to the quarry to extract the stone and 10 more to bring it to the castle. Finally he set 20 brown as a rebuilding team for the castle, keeping the last 20 as a strike force. Then, he had returned to the castle and instructed Giblet to make a few tools for the minions to use to speed up the process. One thing he appreciated with the brown was that they were sturdy and strong. The fact that, once they had learned a task, they became incompetent for any other task didn't bother him in the slightest. During lunch, he began to think of who he'd take as his mistresses. First, of course, was his Chan, always eager to let herself get groped, and now that they were genin, and thus considered adults, as long as she didn't complain, he could do whatever he wanted to her without the civilians raising a fuss about their morality crap. Ino, he didn't know, she was a bit too much on the rebel side and he couldn't really break her without consequences, something he'd rather avoid. Sakura was an absolute no. She was annoying, loud, and flat as a brick. That alone was quite enough to convince Naruto that he wanted nothing to do with the Pinkett, but the fact was said girl was also a rabid anti-pervert and didn't hesitate to hit him. All in all, she was his bane. After lunch, he had explored his castle. First, he had inspected the armory, picking up some armor and a weapon and meeting Giblet. That brown loved bashing way too much. He had then explored the underground part of the castle, and found the life force stock. It was quite pathetic. There was barely a faint green glow from the few poisonous creatures they had killed in the caves. It was luck that his clan library was still intact though, and he had now a lot of reading to do. Additionally, he had picked up a particular scroll that would prove most useful. A little in-depth inspection of the lands surrounding his castle had revealed that an old village was nearby, something that would prove useful in the end. What kind of overlord would he be without at least one village worshipping him? Closing parenthesis. Then, he went to bed, had a good little wet dream of what he'd do to Chan as soon as he got her there, and woke up on this sunny day. He washed up quickly and put on his signature orange jacket. He liked the color, but the jacket was a bit too neon for his taste. Too bad he couldn't buy anything else. Happily, his armor was a nice burnt orange, and he had found a kimono of the same color. He just put this jacket back on to avoid raising suspicions until his sense of drama could give him the most impressive entrance. He then went to the portal and zapped back to Konoha. Today was some kind of evaluation to determine what team they would be on. Just the fact that this was necessary showed how shitty the academy was. When he reached the academy, he saw Kiba with his face buried in the trunk of a tree and a gathering around an unconscious Sasuke. Interestingly, there was an impression of Sasuke's face in the wall near the door to the academy. When he came closer to the mob of fangirls, he heard them cursing the white-eyed freak for what she did. Quickly going past the urge to destroy them for daring to insult his Chan, he felt a surge of pride at what his girl had done. For you see, Naruto loved Hinata. In a twisted and massively perverted way, but he still loved her, and while he wouldn't deny that her chest had played a role in the birth of this love, it certainly wasn't the only reason he loved her. Making his way into the academy, he began to hunt his favorite groping target, and quickly located her as she apparently aimlessly walked the corridors. With a grin, he closed in on her and grabbed her. He was quite surprised when she actually growled at him. You have 5 seconds to remove your hand from my butt and hightail it out of here before I rip your hand off and shove it up your. Now that wouldn't do. He finally had the means and the legal opportunity to make her his. He wouldn't be denied. He may be a pervert, but he still had a heart, and he refused to let her break it. She would be his, no matter if she liked it or not. Though he honestly hoped she'd like it and prayed she just hadn't recognized him. Turning her around, he pushed her against a wall, pining both her hands above her head with one of his arms. Her burning glare immediately melted when it met his blue eyes, and he felt relief. Naruto-kun. She looked at his forehead and her eyes widened. Why you passed? He could feel some joy in her voice, and it pleased him. She'd like this as much as him, and he was happy with this. Yeah, I passed. But you've been a bad girl. What's up with you threatening me? He said with annoyance in his voice. He saw panic enter her eyes and felt actually a bit bad, but he had to play his part before going to the pleasurable part. I'm sorry. I thought it was someone else. Oh, so when it's me, it's no problem if you get groped. Said Naruto with a lecherous smile. You naughty girl, I guess I'll have to. Naruto placed his free hand on the zipper of her jacket and began to pull it as he murmured in her ear. Punish you. Hinata shivered. Looking at her face, he saw a stark contrast between her eyes and expression. Her eyes were blazing with lust and glee, but her face was that of a panicked and shy maiden. She was playing along. Excellent. Naruto K-kun. What are you going to do to me? She squeaked weakly. Naruto answered with one of his most perverted smile and by placing his left leg between hers and rubbing slightly, enjoying the expression of pleasure and desire that appeared on Hinata's face. With her jacket opened, he reached for her shirt and pulled it up, letting it rest above her s. He was satisfied to see that her bra had its clip on the front. It would be simpler. When Naruto unhooked her bra, setting her chest free, Hinata's mind began swimming. She had never felt his hands on her skin before. She was giddy with anticipation and excitement. She blessed the one who invented the Hyuga panties and their ability to eliminate love juice while remaining comfortable. It was the only thing keeping her pants dry right now. She began to utter a weak protest, going back to her role, but Naruto forcibly kissing her interrupted her. It was rough, almost violent, but it was their first kiss and Hinata enjoyed it thoroughly, kissing back passionately. Naruto began kneading her left, causing Hinata to moan in the kiss. His hands felt like fire on her skin, sending wave after wave of pleasure coursing through her as he stimulated her. Hinata shuddered in delight, hoping he would go even farther. Naruto was getting more and more excited. Her lips tasted delicious and her was so soft and enticing. The way she rubbed herself on his thigh was exciting him to no end and her moans only spurred him on. Though the absence of wetness was surprising him. Deciding to investigate, his hand left her and traveled down her body, quickly snaking into her pant and panties, finding there a most satisfying wetness. Sliding a finger inside of her, he enjoyed the way she gasped into the kiss, and felt absolutely delighted when she began to pump herself on his finger as her tongue became frantic in his mouth. Originally, that was as far as he planned to go, but she had excited him too much. She had brought it upon herself, right? Getting his hand out of her pants, he brought it to his face after breaking the kiss, leaving Hinata quivering in need and arousal. Looking at her right in the eyes with an expression of absolute lust, he slowly and sensually licked his finger, causing Hinata to release a throaty moan. Before she could react, he turned her around and pressed her upper body against the wall, her back at a 45 degrees angle. Caressing her shapely rear lovingly, he began pulling her pants and panties down, causing Hinata to gasp again. The Hyuga heiress couldn't believe it. Was he really going to do her right here right now? She had nothing against the idea, but it could be a problem for the test later, though, if it was Naruto, it would be worth it. She heard a zipper being pulled down, and looking behind her, saw that Naruto had let his pants fall to his ankles and that his jacket was open, giving her a delicious view of his poor shirt, struggling to keep his rippling muscles concealed. She licked her lips hungrily, her character of a shy and fair maiden completely forgotten. Naruto pressed the top of his against her, and Hinata understood what he wanted, some good real fun, but without risk of putting her carrier on the line. It made her love him even more. Close your legs, ordered Naruto lustily, and Hinata eagerly complied. Naruto moaned. His cock was caressed by the velvety skin of her inner thigh while the upper part was massaged by her outer lips. As far as he was concerned, this was the antechamber of paradise, but not paradise itself yet. He had yet to enter her. Getting a firm grip on her hips, Naruto began thrusting his hips, initiating the double masturbation and causing both teens to moan in delight. Ah, and Naruto-kun, ah, we might, someone might find us. Hinata managed to say through the excitement and pleasure. It wasn't a call to stop, far from that, more like a way to increase their shared arousal by teasing the exhibitionist in both of them. Naruto felt proud, knowing that her stutter had nothing to do with the weak persona she would often put up. This time it was fully because of his actions. Then let's finish this quick, said Naruto, picking up his pace. The sudden increase in speed caused Hinata to moan loudly. Ooh, yeah, this is life, moaned Naruto with one of his biggest smiles ever plastered on his face. Hinata decided to try something, and began to tense and untense her thigh irregularly, increasing the stimulation Naruto felt without giving him the occasion to adapt to any rhythm. Ooh, Hina-chan, I'll get you for that, moaned Naruto. Hinata looked above her shoulder, catching Naruto's eyes, and sensually licked her lips. Naruto smiled lustfully and picked up his pace again, quickly sending them both over the edge, covering his throbbing manhood with her juice and staining the wall with his cum. Panting, they took a moment to catch their breath before Naruto slid his out of its meaty sheath, causing Hinata to let out a drawn-out moan. Hina-chan, you naughty girl, look at how dirty you've made me, said Naruto teasingly. He was a bit surprised when Hinata turned to face him and pressed herself against him. I'm sorry Naru-kun, I'll clean you up, she whispered in his ear in a tone of voice before kissing him gently. Shivers of delight ran down Naruto's spine. Hinata, still pressed against him, let her hand caress his chest as she lowered herself. Once she was faced with Naruto's hardened member, she smiled softly and pecked it, causing Naruto to shiver yet again. Then, without hesitating, she took it in her mouth, the warm and wet feeling of it causing Naruto to groan throatily as his eyes rolled back. Hinata then cupped one of her s and inserted 2 fingers in her womanhood and, as she edged Naruto off, played with herself. Naruto moaned, both at the sensation and at the show. The aroused blonde placed his hand on top of Hinata's head, massaging her scalp and guiding her along his shaft, moaning blissfully all along. Hinata was also having a great time. Seeing Naruto's pleasured face excited her all the more, and the stimulation she gave herself made her moan around his member, unknowingly stimulating him further. Soon enough, they reached their climax, Hinata drinking Naruto's essence with joy. Finally letting go of Naruto's shaft, Hinata breathlessly got back to her feet, her legs shaking a bit, and a bright smile on her face. She was happy, her crush had finally shown affection to her and she had been able to pleasure him. What she didn't know was that her heaving and still chest was far too enticing for Naruto. Pressing himself against her and kissing her with blazing passion, Naruto pinned her against the wall with his body, placing his manhood just under her folds. Without giving her time to understand what was happening, he began to thrust, his throbbing member pressing against her folds, the tips sometimes brushing against her butt, causing her to scream out in pleasure and surprise, only muffled by his kiss. Their previous activities had made them very sensitive, and it wasn't long before they went over the edge again. Breaking the kiss to allow them to catch their breath, Naruto stayed where he was, pressed against Hinata. Looking in her eyes, he kissed her again, this time softly. Count yourself lucky there was this exam, he told her with a blazing smile. Otherwise I'd have slammed you right against this wall. Hinata suddenly looked irked and muttered something about ing exams, causing Naruto to laugh lightly and kiss her again. They quickly put their clothes back on and went for the roof. Hinata, who had been slightly afraid Naruto would want her only for the physical activity, was reassured. He had been wonderful with her, so it must mean that he wanted more than just with her, right? When they reached the roof, Naruto laid down, and patted the concrete next to him, prompting Hinata to lay down next to him and cuddle his side and allowing Naruto to slip his hand in her pants and grope one of her buttocks. Say Naruto-kun, said the Hyuga heiress. Why didn't you do that kind of things before? Before, we were civilians, meaning that if I had any immoral behavior, no matter how dumb the notion is, it would have been brought before civilian jurisdiction, but now we are genin, Thus we fall under the unofficial rule that says that ninja can do nearly everything they want as long as it doesn't threaten village security. We're supposed to kill people. Weird UAL fetish is quite small compared to that. If I wanted, I could go down there and you in front of everyone, and there would be no legal consequences. No, Hina-chan, I won't do it, not today at least. The Hyuga pouted a bit, but the fact Naruto hadn't said they couldn't do it later somewhat reduced her frustration. Besides, she was too happy to be pissed right now. They enjoyed silence for a few more minutes, until Naruto was the one to break it. Hina-chan, there's something important we gotta talk about. Hinata looked up, surprised by Naruto's serious voice. He sounded unusually serious, and it worried her. Well, I recently learned that I have a clan, and that I'll have to rebuild it. The thing is, I'll have several girls. He said, becoming more and more nervous as he talked. Hinata lay there, taking in what he said, and trying to see why he was so worried. Then she understood. He was afraid she would be angry at him and reject him. That showed he really cared about her. A warm and loving smile made its way to her face, reassuring Naruto. Then, she realized what it implied and a shocked and happy smile replaced the former. Are you asking me to help you rebuild your clan? She asked excitedly. Naruto nodded. I'd like that. Hinata almost accepted on the spot, but she thought back and tried to see how she could use that to her advantage. Quickly thinking of something, she licked her lips sensually, unknowingly making Naruto curious and slightly excited. Alright, but I have 3 conditions. Which are? Asked Naruto. First, you don't share me. I don't care if you share the other girls, but I'm for you only. Naruto nodded eagerly. He could absolutely go with that. He had always been a bit possessive of Hinata anyway. Second, I want to be the top wife. Honestly, I is considering making you my only wife, the others would be more like concubines. Hinata rewarded him for that with a deep and very passionate kiss. Now she knew he would accept, and she would become the Uzumaki matriarch soon enough, because there was no way, that Naruto would refuse her last condition. Alright, last condition. I want to play with the others as I please. A trickle of blood fell from Naruto's nose. Girl on girl action. In my harem. With my wife. How is that possible? Asked Naruto in complete disbelief. He thought he'd have to get her there progressively, not that she'd jump into it willingly and gleefully. Hinata smiled impishly. She was happy that she had surprised Naruto, and especially enjoyed the part where he already considered her his wife. Love, I'm a Hyuga, everyone in my clan is Byaul. In fact, I could be considered one of the mildest Hyuga around since I'm not into some really gross fetish, like bestiality. Don't worry, I'm not sharing you with any animal, you're mine and mine alone. Said Naruto, causing Hinata to purr happily. Say Naru-kun, said Hinata flirtily. How about tonight we celebrate your passing, First you could tell me how you passed around dinner and then we could celebrate, just the two of us, in your room. Naruto, at this point was smiling like he was the luckiest guy on earth. And that's when Hinata murmured into his ear. You can even use the back door. Quote, she's getting it hard tonight. With clones. Hinata exited the academy with a smile on her face and a spring in her steps. Naruto had said that he would remain on the roof and step in at the most opportune moment. Hinata felt beyond happy. Her beloved Naruto loved her back. She was as good as married to him already. she'd have some girls to play with when Naruto wouldn't be there and he'd make her his woman in just a few hours. She happily walked toward her classmates who were gathering near the academy training ground for the beginning of the test. She absent-mindedly noticed her buddies the nails and their reactions. Kiba was quite enthusiastically scooting away from her, but Sasuke, the Uchiha heir, had never seen this before, a female his age that denied him. It was new, surprising, intriguing and enticing. Am I the only one thinking he's creepy? She was obviously strong and, for reasons he couldn't fathom, thought of him as unworthy of her. He would prove his might in this test. He walked toward the Hyuga heiress with confident strides, and stopped right in front of her, proudly looking in her eyes. You are strong, yet you feel I am not worthy of you. I do not know why, but I will prove my strength to you, he said with a smirk. The idea of dominating a strong female appealed to him. It would be another show of his strength. Hinata's face had descended into a blank expression, and it irked him. On an impulse, he went forward, intent on forcibly kissing the girl. With the parents, who were there to watch their progeny's performance, Hiashi was just about to run in and bitch-slap the brat into oblivion, when it happened. Hinata danced around the Uchiha, grabbing the back of his head and taking advantage of him being off balance to slam him into the ground, face first, hard. Then, her cheery smile returning, Hinata hopped lightly onto the back of Sasuke's head, driving it further into the dirt, and began walking away, enjoying thoroughly the few steps she took on the Uchiha's back. Hiashi almost burst in pride at the display. Feeling a friendly slap on his back, he turned to face widely grinning Sume. Hiashi, I like your pup, she's got spunk. Quote, yes, she does. I will gladly admit that I'm very proud of her right now. For standing for herself, of course, the fact that she just walked on Fugaku Tem's son has nothing to do with it. Quote, Shikaku snorted amusedly. Sure Hiashi, sure. Hinata sat against a tree and watched the show unfold. First would be a taijutsu tournament, and she was curious to see who she would be up against. Then, she noticed a pink-haired girl running toward the group with barely wiped bloodstains under her nose. She came to a skidding halt just in front of Iruka and screeched. Iruka-sensei. Naruto is in the academy and he stole a headband. And he was doing nasty things to Hinata. Everyone turned to Hinata in surprise. Many were ready to dismiss the words of the pinkett. After all, the shy heiress would never do this kind of things. All it would take would be a denial. Even half-hearted and meek, even Sasuke had gotten his head out of the ground to see the inevitable denial. But to their shock, Hinata simply raised her right hand to her face and licked sensually her middle and pointer fingers. Immediately, Sasuke was in her face, enraged. Why that failure? He's just a talentless, perverted, worthless orphan. What does he have that I, the heir of the Uchiha, does not? Hinata grabbed his neck yet again and shoved his face in the ground again. Hiashi failed to keep his smile in check. On the roof, an annoyed Naruto saw that Pinky had ruined his occasion to make a grand entrance, and decided to salvage what he could. Walking to the center of the roof, he breathed deeply, then ran toward the edge. With a mighty jump, he flew off the roof. The sudden appearance of a shadow on the ground caused many to look up just as he unfurled the scroll holding his armor while rolling in midair. Sending chakra into the scroll, the modified storage seal hummed to life as a blanket of smoke covered him. Using this cover, he quickly rolled the scroll and stashed it into his pouch before beginning his descent. Completing his roll, He placed himself upright again and began to fall at high speed toward the ground. Slamming feet first into the dirt of the training ground, he cratered slightly the earth and picked up a cloud of dust, obscuring the view of all present and barely showing his form rising from a crouch to a standing position. As the cloud of dust settled, he was revealed in all of his melodramatic glory. He wore suit of armor reminiscent of those of samurai, with large flat pauldrons bearing the insignia of his clan, a wide chest plate, plated gauntlets and shin guards, along with a traditional helmet, the crest of Whirlpool emblazoned on the front. Where, on normal armor, flaps of plates would fall on the back, sides and front from the chest piece, in this one a single piece of cloth flowed from under the chest piece, encircling him completely, falling to his knees and hiding his thighs. The plates were burnt orange and the cloth black as night, but what enhanced his impressive appearance was the mempo covering his face. The armored face mask was fashioned to resemble the face of a snarling fox, leaving only his startling blue eyes visible. Tied as a belt around his waist, his headband stood out proudly, lone piece of silvery metal in an ocean of black and dark orange. Behind his back, the handle of a tachi could be seen on his left, and a cape, a burning tapestry of orange and black, flowed in the wind behind him, depicting a burning castle under a starless night. He took 5 steps forward, each fall of his foot thundering in the deafening silence. In a deep and powerful voice, he talked. I am Uzumaki Naruto, the Overlord. Silence floated on the training ground. Iruka stood there, eyes wide in disbelief. The Hokage's jaw had gone slack, his pipe almost falling from his mouth. The clan heads were looking on, impressed by the entrance. The civilians were beginning to panic, thinking that the demon had taken over. Sasuke had gotten his head out of the ground to look at the dobe, in disbelief. His fangirls were looking in shock at the armored blonde who had just humiliated Sasuke in a contest of coolness, and Hinata had to restrain herself from glomping him and dragging him in the woods to, you get my point. Naruto then raised his left hand, showing that a strange gem was mounted in it. It was gray at first, but when his fist was raised high enough, it glowed red and some kind of horn sounded, and from the woods, brown creatures emerged, converging on Naruto with raucous enthusiasm. While one or two would have looked amusing with their rabbit pelts, the dried blood on their weapons dismissed any feeling of mirth at their sight. There were 20 of them, with kunai in their hands, and many had strange armors, seemingly made of chitin, an impression further reinforced by the helmets a few of them wore, apparently made of an abnormally big spider's head. Like Inuzuka hound-sized spider. Many girls gave a shudder of disgust and the Aburame present began to shake visibly. Even more gruesome, one of them had what seemed to be a human scalp on his head. Sasuke then gathered his wits, stood up and planted himself before Naruto. If Hinata was attracted to the dobe, then he would destroy him, show his dominance. If she couldn't be his, she didn't deserve to be happy. Fight me, he ordered with a snarl. An indignant scream came from the tree line. How dare you? The owner of the voice revealed himself to be Gnarl as he walked into the training ground. No one orders the overlord. It has been so since the Rakudo bestowed the title and its privileges upon his daughter. I see that Tanro's progeny is very much like him, arrogant beyond measure. The minion master snarled in hatred, before turning to Naruto. Master, I advise to remove this cancer from the face of the earth. The Uchiha have only caused grief and sorrow to your ancestors, from the very first day. No Gnarl, as enjoyable as it would be, it would cause too many problems. I will humble him myself. I expect a full explanation about that Tanro character. Most certainly, my lord, said Gnarl, bowing humbly before his master. Naruto walked toward the circular fighting ring that sat in the middle of the training ground, Sasuke following behind with a smirk. They took their position, Iruka uncertainly giving a start to the fight. Immediately, Sasuke darted forward, slamming his fist straight into Naruto's mempo. He could not see that under the lacquer laid metal and not wood. Had he known that, he wouldn't have bruised his hand so much. With a grunt, Sasuke jumped back, looking at his bruised knuckles, not understanding what had happened. With a grunt of anger, Sasuke dived forward again, intent on striking the unmoving blonde down. He only managed to hurt his fists, pounding against the thick metal plating. Then, Naruto finally accepted to retaliate, and did so with an incredibly fast strike of his right fist, straight in Sasuke's jaw, sending him flying out of the ring. Everyone, including himself, seemed surprised. Naruto brought his hand before his eyes, flexing his fingers. Interesting. All Uzumaki armors are laden with seals, my lord, said Gnarl, both to allow maximum mobility and to increase the strength and speed of the wearer. Sasuke snarled, getting back up. Get out of that armor, Dobi, and fight like a man. Quote, why would I? Am I not a ninja? As such, the only honor code I am bound to is that of loyalty. Loyalty to the village, to my comrades, and to my clan. Fairness in a fight is not required. Sasuke gritted his teeth, and prepared to charge in again, but Iruka stopped him. Sasuke has been thrown out of the ring, and thus has lost the match. Winner, Uzumaki Naruto. A cream blur crossed the training ground and settled itself in Naruto's arms, a purring Hyuga looking straight in her boyfriend's eyes. And when were you going to tell me about your little imps? Asked Hinata with a raised eyebrow. With a chuckle, Naruto drew her closer and used his somewhat freed hands to remove the mempo. Actually, I was supposed to tell you before this whole mess, but we kind of got sidetracked, so. It's okay, said Hinata. Her voice then gained a seductive note to it. You'll just have to make it up to me. Naruto smiled brightly, and pervertedly. I love my life. Master, asked Gnarl, is this one your first mistress? Quote, Wheel, I still gotta ask permission to Hiyashi-sama. You have my blessing, said a popcorn-eating Hiyashi. Oh, awesome. Thanks Hiyashi-sama. Well, that's taken care of. We're officially engaged, Hina-chan. Quote, Hinata was almost bursting in joy. She sent a grateful look to her father, the man answering with a double thumbs up, with his popcorn bucket mysteriously flying in the air. Sasuke just couldn't believe it. What? Why? He is completely perverted. He is bound to be unfaithful. Why chose him? What does he have that I don't? Asked a completely jealous Sasuke. Hinata decided to humor him and answered. First, he's not a cold like you. Second, he has given me plenty of happiness since I met him. Third, we share quite a lot of interests. As for unfaithfulness, that won't be a problem since I'll play with the girls too, said Hinata, causing a good number of males to nosebleed. And on a side note, he's big and you're tiny, concluded Hinata with a smirk. Kiba got up, and planted himself in front of Naruto. The blonde prepared himself to knock some sense in Kiba, but the Inuzuka fell to his knees, hands joined in a prayer and eyes shining. Please master, teach me your ways. Teach me to be a pervert and still get several willing girls. A massive sweat drop ensued. Air, Sorry Kiba, but that's kind of a family tradition, so I don't think I can help you with it. Quote. Kiba began to tear up before wailing. Why? Why must polygamy be a keke genke? The sweat dropped. The test had finally come to an end. It had taken most of morning and a good deal of the afternoon. Hinata was classified as scout, skirmisher, and Naruto as tank, frontline fighter. Naruto took another scroll out of a pouch on his left hip and unfurled it around him, being covered once again by a blanket of smoke. When it cleared, he was wearing a silk burnt orange kimono, making him look regal. Of course, Hinata blushed while ogling him shamelessly. Quite a few girls in the class also blushed and began cursing themselves for not paying less attention to his jacket. Naruto picked Hinata up bridal style, causing the girl to smile delightedly, when Hiashi approached the two. Daughter, Naruto-san, if you would please come with me, I believe we have much to discuss, said Hiashi in a calm yet warm tone. Naruto shrugged and followed the clan head through the streets, Hinata still in his arms. He had sent Gnarl and the minions back to the castle. They quickly reached the Hyuga compound and went, surprisingly, to Hinata's room. Now, we should pack your belongings, Hinata. I think it would be better if you moved in with Naruto, it would prove simpler for you. Quote. Really? I can move in with Naru-kun? Yes, though I expect you to come back to the compound to continue your training in Juken. Now there is also something I must give you. Quote. Hiashi fished in his pocket and took out a small piece of red plastic with leather straps. Father, is that? Yes, it is the ball gag with which I proposed to your mother. I know she would have wanted you to have it, said Hiashi, looking fondly at the toy that had muffled so many of his beloved Hitomi's pleasured screams. Hinata took the little thing reverently, overcome with emotions. Naruto s his arm around her waist and pulled her to him, looking lovingly into her eyes. If you want, we can use it tonight. Hinata smiled. I'd like that. Hiashi nodded approvingly. You have chosen a fine one, Hinata, a fine one indeed. You are welcome in our family, Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto and Hinata had just teleported to the castle thanks to the gate near the Hokage Tower. Hinata looked around, amazed at the size of the halls. She looked at the tower heart in wonderment, caressing the iridescent sphere with the tip of her fingers. It is beautiful. The tower heart, the source of many powers. For instance, it powers the tower gate we just took. Come on, let's go eat. Naruto grabbed her hand and led her to the dining room, neither disturbed by the silence that permeated these damaged halls. It's not in the best of states. No, but it will be rebuilt, and the banner of Whirlpool will once again stand proud on these walls. Whirlpool. Wait, you're the heir of a nation too. Quote. Yup. Handsome, strong, loving, as perverted as you, and a prince to top it off. Jackpot, my little Hina, jackpot. They reached the dining hall to see a table with many types of food arrayed, including an Uzumaki-sized bowl of ramen. Gnarl was standing in a corner. Master, since you had a guest, I took the liberty to send some brown to hunt some animals and had them prepared. I also had some delicacies your ancestors stocked unsealed and prepared. Quote. Excellent Gnarl. Now why don't you tell us about that Tanro fellow while we eat? Certainly, Lord, said Gnarl as Naruto and Hinata sat down with the later in the first's lap. Tanro of the Battle Fan was the oldest of the Rakudo's children, and fathered the Uchiha clan. That little brat was arrogant and forceful, always giving orders to everyone as if they should follow him just because he said so. The only one he respected was his father, even his own siblings he saw with contempt. Truly a most unpleasant person. Gnarl rubbed his chin. Then was Sanzo of the Thousand Hands, founder of the Senju line. He won his nickname through his speed, for none could rival him in taijutsu. He was slightly better than his brother. He at least left Lady Nemu alone when she said she wanted no part in their stupid squabbles, but he had just as big an ego and he thought that he was the one supposed to rule. The wrinkled face of Gnarl then lit up in a fond smile. Ah, and lastly there was little Lady Nemu. She became known as Nemu of the Whirling Tide because of her incredible control of water, but to us, minions, she was the little lady. Her brothers were fighting so hard for their father's approval that they never paid us any mind, always looking to one-up each other. But Nemu, she would often come to play with us. When she came with us, the red created fireworks, the blue swam with her, the green actually washed up and played tag with her, and the brown would try their hardest to make her laugh with their tricks. She was such a sweet child. When she grew up, she kept coming to us, she was fond of us. She would listen to my stories as I told her of our battles next to her father, how we took down the mighty Jubi, how we defeated the bandit kingdom of Chishio Blood no Kuni, and many other tales I have now forgotten in my old age. A tired sigh escaped his lips. The battle against the Jubi she liked the most. Tens of thousands of minions fought in this battle, with the Rakudo at our head. I wish you could have witnessed it, the glory of the first overlord, master of life and death, the Rakudo Sennin. The browns pinned the beast to the ground, the greens weakened it, the red bombarded it constantly, all that fell were brought back by the blue. It was a cataclysmic battle, and one I will always remember. I was there, fighting next to the overlord, the firstborn of the minions. When the beast was finally defeated, Rakudo-sama sealed its chakra inside of himself, trapping the soul and power of the beast in his own. Then, around the dried husk of the beast, he gathered rocks and stones and propelled it into the night sky, creating the moon. Gnarl looked at his audience and smirked. They had stopped eating, listening intently to his story. The day of the Rakudo's death was a sad one indeed. He called for his 3 children, and told them of his coming demise. For the first time, the 3 siblings agreed totally, and wept together. He told them of his plan to avoid the rebirth of the Jubi. He would split the beast in 9 creatures, the Biju. Quote, "You mean," said Hinata, "like Kyubi." "Indeed, young lady, indeed. Little Kurama was one of them." "Wait, the Kyubi has a name." "Yes,